my loves. This time we're going to take a look at how the Ferocious Beast mini print is made. You can see that I'm transferring my graphite sketch onto the linoleum block by burnishing the back of my paper with the edge of the ruler. This automatically creates a mirror image, which is exactly what I need for printing. Carefully removing the tape now. You can see the image has been transferred onto the block. I'm using Battleship Gray linoleum from Speedball. I'll talk more about the different types of linoleum later, but this is the kind I use most frequently, and this transfer method is just one of many. Now it's time to sharpen my tools. I'm using the Flex Cut slip strap with a file V-cut gouge, and I just prepare the wood and then sharpen at a 45-degree angle. I'm gonna do several passes and then flip it over and hone the back of the blade as well. Using this strap basically just realigns any of the metal burrs that come off and get out of place, leaving the blade dull. So now when you're finished, you just take a rag or paper towel and wipe off any of the medium and wood shavings. I don't usually have any specific methods when I go into a carving. I think it's a balance of carving outlines and going into details because I like working on both at the same time. So just carving again at a 45-degree angle and just making sure my tools are sharpened so that I have an easier time working and reduce the risk of hurting myself. I feel like I should give the printmakers PSA. Keep your hands behind the carving tools. I don't always do this, you'll probably see at some points, but I've had my fair share of injuries from my idiocy, so please be careful. I decided to ink my lines so that you and I can both see better. This gives more contrast and I'm less likely to make mistakes as I'm carving. Another advantage is that I'm not smearing graphite and my lines stay put. I like to keep a brush handy so that I can brush away all those linoleum shavings. Switching to my Flex Cut V gouge. It has a slightly different angle. The V is deeper, so I get a little bit of a sharper line, which is great for the super fine details like the fur here. With the deeper V, I can make more shallow cuts and have a finer line because that point is a little bit more narrow. You'll see I switch between tools throughout the video for different reasons. But yeah, these flex cut mini tools are some of my favorites to use, especially for highly detailed areas like you see here. Now with a Speedball number 5 U-gouge. This one's great for covering large areas and clearing the background around my design. It's actually really satisfying to clear out large sections like this. Steady, shallow movements work best. Here I'm doing the same thing with a smaller tool, carving out the excess there around the whiskers. As you can see, the penned areas are marking off where the positive printing surface will be, so that's what gets inked and printed onto my paper. And I'm carving out the negative space, which isn't marked by pen. Sometimes if you're working in the negative, your inked lines will show where you need to carve rather than where you need to avoid carving. So it's just a matter of what the situation calls for. Cutting out these sparkles reminds me of the process of carving my print A12, which features 244 individually carved stars. It was very tedious, but rewarding to create my own little galaxies. Carving around that little circle. Then I'll come in with permanent marker and touch up the printing surface. This allows me to go in and redefine my shapes more accurately. Feel free to skip through any boring parts of this video. I tried to keep as much as I could, showing the variety of work done on this block, but I had to pare it down from about 3.5 hours of footage. That's why this video is kind of long. So skip ahead if you need to, or just chill out and watch. I find that carving videos are kind of relaxing to me, so it's up to you. Okay, sometimes I need to reinforce the linoleum with glue if it's crumbling. I don't know if it's an acceptable practice, but it keeps my hard work in place. Be careful though. If your linoleum crumbles a whole lot, it can be a sign that it's too old or hasn't been stored properly and your block won't be as durable as it should be. I'm using the tip of a pencil to smooth out my glue and make sure that the most delicate areas are strengthened. Sometimes I'll use the side of a tool to shave off the edge of a raised area, like you just saw there. There's lots of versatility when working with carving tools. You just have to figure out what works best for you. Placing some more glue in those tiny areas there to reinforce them. That's something else I wanted to talk about. The Battleship Gray linoleum does crumble, but that's because of the makeup of it. There are other types of linoleum. They're usually referred to as speedy cut or something like it, and they're the more rubbery blocks. They're really easy to cut into, and you also get sharp prints from them. So I actually could have benefited from using a rubber block for this print because there's so much detail in it. But I was working with what I had at the time, so that's just something to think about when choosing the types of blocks you want to work with. Keep in mind the material makeup and how that affects your carving process and the prints themselves. Okay, now it's time to measure my paper and create that deckled edge. I use a T-square as a tearing bar, then I apply pressure and gently tear the paper toward the bar. Next, I erase the lines and I've got my 4x4 piece of paper. The ink I'm using here is one of my favorites to print with. It's from Cranfield Inks, and it's the safe wash version, which means it's an oil-based ink that can be cleaned up with soap and water, so there's no need for solvents. When I need something more effective for cleaning up other inks, I'll use a citrus oil-based cleanser. It does the trick and it's safer for the environment. So I'm making sure I get an even layer of ink on my brayer or roller while mixing the ink at the same time. Then I apply ink to my block. I try to ink it as thoroughly as possible without oversaturating it. I'm making sure to cover every area of the printing surface, which takes quite a few passes and a keen eye. But once we're all inked up, I'll be ready to clean up around the edges of the printing block and make sure there's no extra ink that could impress onto the paper and mess up my print. I've gone ahead and pulled a test print, which is the first print before revisions, so you want to take a good look at what you've got so you can see if you need to make any improvements. And there's the printing block on my shoddy registration board. I don't have a printing press for my smaller prints, so I used a makeshift system that includes an old die cutting machine with rollers, but there are lots of ways to get an impression. If you have thinner paper, you can use a baren or even the back of a spoon to get your print. Et voila! I've made my revisions and printed a few of these kittens. This print, Ferocious Beast, is the first mini print available to my patrons. Mini prints are sent out every season to patrons of the tier Curious Cuppa or higher. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Let me know if you have any questions and I'll be happy to answer them. I'm Kelly of Gray's Posy. Until next time.